Hi readers, it's time now for chapter 7 of the Sunbearer Trials by Aiden Thomas. And make sure you have your book and your highlighter pen so you can follow along with me and highlight the parts that I indicate that I'm highlighting to later go back and make questions and answers for, and also you'll have it highlighted and you'll know exactly where the page numbers are, which will come in handy if you do a challenge during competition, right? Also, a little warning, going to be profanity. I just have to preface each reading with that in case you've got a little kid there and you want to make that decision, but this is maybe not for them. So grab my glasses. Okay, chapter 7. That night, Teo slept like shit. See, I told you right off the bat, right? Okay. He thought the fancy bed would be like sleeping on a cloud, but it was too soft, too different. He spent hours tossing and turning trying to get comfortable. The room was also way too quiet. He was used to the constant hum of Quetzalon drifting in through his open window every night. Here, the silence pressed against his ears. Too soon, a light rapping on the door woke him from his fitful sleep. A soul priest stuck his head in, informing him that breakfast was ready. Teo spent a long time in the shower, letting the hot water relax the tension in his wings. In a bleary-eyed haze, he put on his binder and stumbled down the hall. When Teo walked into the dining room, he found Naya sitting at the long table, swiping the last bit of egg yolk from one of her 2 finished plates with a torn-off piece of tortilla. "Good morning," she said, jumping up from her chair. "Is there coffee?" Teo asked, squinting at the buffet Mais and Pan Dulce had laid out. "Loads, and Dulce snuck us out some sugar to add," Naya said, crossing to Teo with a few long strides. She stopped and gave him a once-over. "Wait, why aren't you in your gear?" Teo rubbed his fist against his eyes. What gear? He realized Naya was dressed already. Her dark hair was in her usual braids, but her outfit made him pause. It was like some high-tech futuristic athletic wear you'd see in a magazine. She had on tight leggings and a compression sports bra. The material was black, but Teo could make out a subtle honeycomb pattern to it. Panels of gold material and mesh crossed her thighs and accented her top. Sol's sunburst was embroidered with gold thread on Naya's upper left chest, and the mountain glyph of her home city, La Cumbre, was stitched inside the sun. You know, it may have been mentioned previously, but I'm not sure, so I'm going to highlight that Naya's home city was La Cumbre. "What are you wearing?" Teo asked, suddenly much more awake. Naya's expression shifted from amused confusion to dreadful realization. "These are our training uniforms from the academy." "Our?" Teo looked past Naya to find Soshi, Atsi, Marino, and Desi sitting at the table eating. They all wore clothes similar to Naya's with slight variations. Meanwhile, Teo was standing there in his pajamas. Someone laughed, and Teo turned to see Ocello, Aurelio, and Aristella walk in. Ocello had a wide, mean smirk on his face. Aristella laughed behind her hand and nudged her brother, but Aurelio didn't react. Silently, he looked Teo up and down, scowling. The war, Semidios, stood between the twins, comically short in comparison, in a training uniform that left their arms and legs bare. Aurelio and Aristella were in the same matching outfits they'd been wearing at the fire in Quetzalon, leggings, shorts, and sleeveless tops that left their midriffs bare. Aurelio's gold cuffs were still locked around his forearms, the strange 3-fingered gloves on his hands. So 3-fingered gloves on his hands. The thin material of his uniform clung to his chest and thighs, hugging every muscular curve and leaving very little to the imagination. It was fucked up that he was such a jerk and still looked that hot in just training clothes. "Where are your clothes?" Aurelio suddenly asked, that damn frown back on his face. Teo was about to ask what the hell that meant when Ocello let out an ugly laugh. "Yeah, are you really going to compete in sweats?" Teo's hands clenched into fists, embarrassment a hot slap on the back of his neck. Without warning, Naya lurched toward Ocello. They stumbled back, startled. Naya exhaled through her nose and crossed her arms. Yeah, that's what I thought. Now it was Teo's turn to laugh. He looked back to Aurelio, but he was glaring down at the breakfast table like he was about to light it on fire. Ocello's stunned expression quickly contorted into a snarl. What's all this? Diosa Luna had walked into the dining room from the kitchen. Her dark eyes cut among them. Is there a problem? She asked, even and calm. Teo straightened and cleared his throat, while the other four also gathered themselves to look as innocent as possible. No, Diosa, Ocello said gruffly, like it physically pained them to hold their tongue. They all knew how good and well not to evoke the wrath of Luna. After another moment of scrutiny, she nodded. Teo, come with me. We have your uniform waiting for you, Luna said, motioning for him to follow her. Shio just finished his own fitting. Teo followed her back into the hall, making a point to keep his chin held high. Diosa Luna brought him into a room where a small group of soul priests was waiting. A circular dais was in the center with a set of 3 mirrors and a rack of clothes. We've made you a uniform like the students at the academy receive. Okay, I'm highlighting that. We didn't know your preferences, and we were a bit crunched for time, so we had to use our best judgment, Luna said, pulling a shirt off a hanger and giving it to Teo. Teo ran his fingers over the short-sleeved shirt, getting a closer look at the honeycomb pattern in the light. These all have a honeycomb pattern. I wonder if that gives it some power. Instead of gold accents like Naya's, these accent panels were jade green. This seems really fancy, he murmured, noting the Quetzalcoatl glyph stitched into the sun with matching gold thread. It's the latest in performance wear, Luna agreed, moisture-wicking and tear-resistant, highlighting that. These will hold up to damage even better than your semidios skin. Damage? Teo repeated, cutting Luna a nervous glance. She gave him a patient smile. These are the Sunbearer Trials. Teo did his best to ignore the heavy weight that dropped into his stomach. He didn't want to think about what possible outfit-tearing scenarios laid ahead of him. While running his hand over the back of the shirt, he found 2 vertical slits. What are these for? He asked, sliding his fingers through the gaps. Each uniform has special accommodations depending on the semidios's talents. Some are flame retardant, others have extra stretch, she explained. Those are for your wings. My wings? Teo shook his head and tried to hand the shirt back. I don't use my wings. Luna's eyebrows pinched. You'll need them for the trials. No, I won't, Teo insisted. I can do it without them. Luna gave him a look that rivaled Huemac's long-suffering exasperation, but Teo wouldn't back down. Then don't use them, but you still need to wear the uniform, she said, ignoring Teo's outstretched hand. The material has enough give that they should fit fine underneath. Teo was tempted to argue that he needed a whole new shirt, but he didn't want to press his luck with the diosa. Fine, he agreed, albeit tersely. With some help from the priests, Teo changed and managed to wrangle his wings under the shirt with the help of a binder. He stood in front of the mirrors, examining himself and feeling absolutely ridiculous. The clothes were so tight, he felt completely exposed. They'd given him a pair of shorts, thanks Soul, but they were tiny, and every time he tried to pull them down toward his knee, they sprang back up to the middle of his thigh. The doors flew open and in strode Chisme and Verdad. Who's up next? Chisme asked, as his 2 assistants filed in behind them. When he spotted Teo, they hefted their large cameras and started snapping pictures. Teo threw his hands up, cringing as lights danced in front of his eyes. What's he doing here? He asked Luna, scowling. The last thing you wanted right now was an audience. We need promotional photos of all the competitors in their uniforms, Luna explained. We just finished up with your creepy little friend, Chisme said through a smile. Today he'd exchanged his red outfit for an obnoxiously bright orange one and matching lipstick. Another jade, Verdad said, jotting down notes while wearing a practical pantsuit. 2 jade competitors for the very first time. She glanced up at Teo through her glasses. I'd love a first person's perspective on what that might mean. Teo ignored both of them. I don't want my picture taken. Teenagers, always so self-conscious, Chisme mused. You're not used to being in the spotlight, are you? Read-Aloud asked. To Luna's credit, she did at least seem sympathetic to Teo's pleading look, but it was no use. I'm afraid it's part of the gig, she said. Teo groaned and tipped his head back. Fine. He stepped back into the daze and scowled at Chisme. I just want to get it over with. The feeling is quite mutual, Chisme reassured him. Read-Aloud stepped forward. I would love to sit down with you, Teo. Maybe we could... No, Teo snapped. He stood there while Chisme barked orders and his assistants took rapid-fire pictures. He didn't know what to do or how to stand. He couldn't even figure out where to put his hands before Chisme said they were finished. I think that's the best we're going to get, he said as he checked the camera roll. He waved Teo off without even looking up. You can go back to being angry with the world now. Teo, really, Read-Aloud tried again. Teo stomped out of the room, hoping he'd never have to see those pictures for himself. When he got back to the dining room, most of the Golds were sitting at one end of the table talking, not even bothering to look up when he entered. Aurelio watched as Teo took the seat on the other side of Naya from Shio, and Teo did his best to ignore him. The younger boy had on a similar uniform to his, but he had a lightweight jacket on top. Looking sharp, Naya grinned as Teo plopped into the seat next to her. I feel ridiculous, he grumbled, tugging on the high collar of his shirt. How did you get a jacket? Shio shrugged as he chewed on a pineapple spear dusted with tahine. I asked for one. Felt kind of naked otherwise. Teo huffed. Well, shit, why didn't I think of that? Naya laughed and thumped him hard on the back. You'll get used to it. Now eat up. We've got some ass to kick. Shio pushed his plate away. Are you nervous? He asked Teo in a small voice. Hey, we'll be fine. We just got to get through it without being in last place, he said, giving Shio's arm an encouraging shake. You've got your bracelet, right? Shio nodded, tugging back his sleeve to reveal it safely on his wrist. A couple of seats away, Aurelio stared at it. Why do you have an azabache bracelet? Aurelio asked, sounding more curious than anything, but the last thing Teo wanted was for Shio to be put on the spot by the golden boy of the trials. Okay, so Aurelio staring at Shio's bracelet, which is a good luck bracelet, and asking why he has an azabache bracelet. It's for good luck, Teo snapped, but Aurelio didn't even glance in his direction. Why do you need a bracelet to ward off bad luck if your dad is mala suerte? Why are you scared of me? Shio asked, a hint of challenge in his voice. Aurelio said nothing. The two watched each other for a moment, but then Aurelio shook his head and turned away. A surprised laugh jumped in Teo's chest. Damn, I knew I liked you for a reason, Naya said with an approving nod. Yeah, I really don't think we need to worry about you holding your own, Teo agreed, bumping shoulders with Shio, who ducked his head and smiled. I trust you're all ready to travel to your first host city, Luna asked as she entered the dining room. Immediately, excited murmurs passed between the Golds. Even Naya was grinning ear to ear. Meanwhile, Teo tried to fight off the sinking feeling in his stomach. The day after each trial, you will have some time to explore the host city. For the first time, a thrill of excitement shot through Teo. Finally, he'd be able to see what the other cities were like. Highlighting this. And the hosting dios will throw us a farewell banquet that night, before we board the boat again to travel to the next city. Your belongings have already been gathered. Luna continued, motioning for them to get up. So, if you'll all follow me, we can begin our journey. Where are we going? Otzi asked, practically buzzing on the edge of his seat. Luna smiled. The host city for the first trial will be La Cumbre. Remember, that's Naya's home city. Yes! Naya shouted, punching a fist in the air. Teo relaxed a little. He wasn't exactly relieved, but going to Naya's home city seemed less terrifying than any other option. Aristella scoffed and crossed her arms over her chest. That's not fair, Ocello said, their face all scrunched up and angry. Oh, shut it, Naya snapped. Her dad's going to cheat to make it easier on her, Ocello argued. Already making up excuses for why you come in last, huh? Teo quipped. Ocello's angry snarl was a satisfying sight. The host cities were decided on and designed by the gods long before the selection took place, Luna explained. Ocello opened their mouth, but when Luna cut them a hard stare, they snapped it shut. Can you give us a hint at what the first trial will be? So she asked, and signed with a sweet voice batting her eyelashes. Is there going to be lava? Otzi asked. I hope not, Marino choked. Wouldn't that put Aurelio and Aristella at an unfair advantage? Shio asked Teo, worry pinching his eyebrows. Before Teo could reassure him, Aristella cut in. Sucks to suck, she said with a sarcastic smile from across the table, not loud enough for Luna to overhear. A quiet tinking noise turned Teo's attention to Aurelio, who was tapping his fingers rhythmically on one of the golden armbands, his head turned toward the windows. Real useful. Teo rolled his eyes and ignored both of the twins. I'm sure it'll be fine, he told Shio, though he didn't quite believe it himself. There won't be any clues given out, Luna said, speaking over the waves of excited chattering. Tierra being the one to host and organize the trial is a hint in and of itself. You're all smart and capable. Debatable, Teo grumbled under his breath. Shio covered his smile with his hand. I'm sure you can think of some scenarios on your own. It will be an even playing field for all competitors, Luna said, looking at everyone in turn. Understand? Teo held back a sarcastic snort. Even playing field. All he could do was try his best and take care of his friends. He just had to stay focused on that and maybe fuck with some golds along the way. Teo had seen cruise ships on TV before and plenty of commuter boats in person, but the boat they'd be using to travel through Reino del Sol was on a whole other level. Somewhere between a yacht and a ferry, it was sleek and tall with 3 levels of massive windows. The boat itself was white, but the hull was painted with churning waves in shades of cornflower, cobalt, and navy blue. The pattern looked familiar, but Teo couldn't quite place it. That makes me think I want to highlight that, even though I'm not sure yet why. Okay, so the boat, the hull, had churning waves painted on it in all shades of blue. Cornflower, cobalt, and navy blue. Those are all shades of blue. And the pattern looked familiar to Teo, but he didn't know from where he recognized it. Here we go. Until he noticed the flags at the stern and the bow. The one at the back was white and had Sol's glyphs stitched in golden thread, and the one at the front displayed Diosa Agua's tumbling waves. There were also banners displaying each of the competitors' glyphs. The jade green eye of Mala Suerte and bird of Quetzal were the only pops of color among the gold pennants. The golds, including Naya, walked right up the ramp like they did this all the time. Only Teo and Shio hung back. Whoa, Shio whispered, and Teo was glad he wasn't the only one. This thing is bigger than my entire school. Teo grinned. Damn, and I thought Quetzalon High was the smallest in all of Sol. He teased with a nudge. When they reached the deck, Sol Priest handed them thin crystal glasses with something clear and bubbly inside. Highlighting that. This is way too fancy for me, Shio murmured before tentatively taking a sip. Naya laughed. Being a hero does have its perks. Salud! Teo took a big swig, and his tongue was immediately assaulted by bitterness and sharp bubbles. He coughed and choked, shooting the liquid out his nose. Oh my gods, Teo sputtered, frantically wiping at his burning nose as his eyes watered. What the hell was that? It's mineral water, Naya said, while Shio dissolved in fits of laughter. It's rancid, he coughed. Why does it taste like that? A haughty scoff caught their attention. Amateur, Ocello said with a mean smirk. Poor, Aristella corrected, studying her fingernails. Before Teo could think of a smart-ass retort, Aurelio thrust a napkin in his face. You have snot on your chin, he said plainly. Everyone burst into a fresh peal of laughter. Teo pushed Aurelio's hand away and quickly wiped at his face. Yeah, got it, thanks, he said gruffly, turning away. Shio, at least, had the decency to hide his mouth behind his fist. Meanwhile, Naya cackled. So Teo wiped his hand off on her arm. But she only shrugged. I've got 2 older brothers. I've had grosser stuff wiped on me. Luna, I'm going to highlight that Naya's got 2 older brothers. Luna led them into a huge room filled with plush furniture and wide windows. Everything was polished wood, shiny bronze, or white upholstery. More soul priests awaited them, along with a crew of people in crisp white uniforms. Teo immediately recognized the one in front with the pixie cut and sharp gray eyes as Marino's older sister, Maria, highlighting Marino's older sister's Maria. This will be your new home during the trials, Luna said, coming to a stop next to Maria. I'm sure some of you know our captain. Marino grinned and his sister threw him a wink. Okay, so she's the captain of the ship. Maria has taken time off from leading the search and rescue fleet to transport us to the host cities. So her regular job, Maria's regular job, is being on the search and rescue fleet. Pleasure to have you on board, Maria said, her voice sharp and clear. Let's have a little tour before, and we'll be off shortly. This is the common area, Luna said, gesturing around them. It was filled with chairs and couches and books. A large television that was currently showing the news sat on the back wall. Oddly enough, it was footage of the boat they were currently on, shot from the docks. If it weren't for the tinted glass, Teo could have waved and seen himself on the screen. There was also a large wooden table with cushioned chairs and a shelf loaded with games like El Gocho and dominoes. Feel free to spend time here between the trials and get to know one another better, Luna said before leading them back outside. Not likely, Teo said to Naya under his breath. This is the main deck, Maria said, leading them out onto the main deck. As you know, we'll be headed for La Cumbre first and should be arriving by late afternoon. The deck had a large semicircular white couch set into the shiny wood floor, so you had to step down onto it. A glass table in the middle already held bottles of water and juice on ice along with fresh fruit. The boat shifted as it pulled away from the dock. As the boat picked up speed, the group rushed to the bow to look over the edge. Naya stepped onto the railing and leaned her entire upper body over. She threw her arms into the air and crowed happily. How's this big thing going to get through? Gio asked. Teo turned to see what they were pointing at, the wall of mountains that surrounded Sol Temple, heading straight for one of the waterfall passages, but there was no way the boat could possibly fit. Maria was deep in conversation with Luna, neither of them the least bit bothered. As they neared the wall of jagged rock, the small waterfall stretched, growing taller and wider until finally the water split open. Okay, so there's this wall of mountains. The boat's not going to fit, but then the waterfall stretches and gets taller and wider until the water splits open and the boat easily passed through. A light cascade of water raining down around them as if they were plunged into the darkness of the cave. As they were plunged into the darkness of the cave. I guess that answers your question, Teo said to Shio. The golds spoke animatedly with one another, and Naya threw herself onto the white cushions of the couch. Man, I could get used to this, she sighed. Teo thought if Naya won the Sunbearer Trials, she would adjust quite nicely to the life of a celebrity. The only people who didn't seem excited were Aurelio and Aristella. They hung back by the entrance of the common room, their usual air of grandiosity now a matching set of soft frowns, eyeing the errant water that dripped onto the deck. Then Teo realized, as a pair of fire demigods, they're fire demigods, being trapped on a boat surrounded by water was probably their worst nightmare, highlighting that. Not that he cared, obviously. As they made their way through the caves, Luna called them back inside. On the other end of the common room, double glass doors opened up to another deck. This is the aft deck. Dios Maíz and Diosa Pan Dulce's meals will be served here, Maria said, showing them a dining table dressed with white linens. Teo's heart sank. Every meal? Yes, every meal, Luna said. I thought we were going to going to the cities, Teo pressed. You know, travel Reino del Sol, see the sights, eat the food. highlighting that. He wants to try the foods from the different cities, but to me it seems like countries, which is what I'd want to do. Like if I was traveling to a bunch of different countries, if I was going to like Spain and Italy and France and England, I'd want to try the foods from all the different ones because they're so different. You will have designated time when you are allowed off the boat to be shown around as a group, Luna explained coolly. Teo groaned. A group? This was turning into a glorified field trip, highlighting they have to go as a group. Luna went on like she hadn't heard him, but aside from the host city banquets, you will have your meals here, also as a group. Maybe those were the rules, but what Luna didn't know wouldn't hurt her. As they continued their tour, Teo kept an eye out for potential escape routes. Marea led the way up a set of spiral stairs to the next floor. To their left was a corridor, and to the right a single door. This is the main cabin, Marea explained. Above us is the bridge where my crew and I will be running this operation, and your cabins are this way. As they entered the hallway, Teo saw that their glyphs were once again displayed on each door. Each of you will have your own cabin with a private bathroom, Marea said. She opened the door to the first room marked as Aristella's. It was a bit smaller than the one in Sol Temple, but just as luxurious. Large portholes looked out above the waterline. As everyone rushed to find their rooms, Teo hung back. With all the opulence and excess, it was easy to get distracted from the real reason they were there. But Teo didn't forget. It was like he was staying at some really fucked up sleepaway camp where instead of giving out superlatives, someone got stabbed at the end of the summer. When they were done scoping things out, Marea gestured toward the other end of the hall. The training room is this way. Excited chatter broke out among the golds. Even Naya's face lit up as she followed everyone into the room. Teo rolled his eyes and glanced at Shio. Jocks. Should we follow them? Shio wondered, casting an uncertain look at to Maria and Luna, the only ones left in the hall, who were deep in their own conversation. Teo sighed. Yeah, I guess. He grumbled. There was no way he'd give anyone else the satisfaction of thinking he wasn't up for the challenge. Walking into the training room was like walking through a portal to a dystopian world dominated by the fitness industry. There was a climbing wall with different colored flags for some reason, huge racks of metal weights, and a bunch of machines that looked like torture devices. The Golds were already putting the equipment to use. Some of them tried out the obstacle courses that had been set up, Aristella's shadow box with the ballet-like precision, and Acello stomped around lifting literally everything heavy-looking that wasn't bolted to the ground. Do you know how any of this stuff works? Shio asked as they lingered by the door. I usually ditch PE, Teo confessed with a shrug. They could have asked Naya for pointers, but she was already halfway up the rock wall. If those meatheads can figure it out, it can't be that complicated, right? Teo said, confidently walking up to a barbell loaded with weights, one of the few things he actually recognized. What could he lift? 200 pounds at least, right? He didn't know what the milk crates to kilograms conversion was. He bent forward and curled his fingers around the bar. Okay, so Teo is able to lift 200 pounds. That's not how you do a deadlift, Aurelio said, so close to Teo that he felt the heat radiating from all his bare skin. When he looked up, the other boy was standing in front of him again with that disapproving look on his face. Aurelio's words from last night burned in Teo's chest. They shouldn't be here. You're going to hurt yourself, Aurelio went on. Let him, Aristella said, with a disdainful laugh, not even a glint of sweat on her brow. Teo glared. I think I know how to pick something up, he said. It's not rocket science. Aurelio gave a small shake of his head. He moved a step closer. You need to hold the weight close to your body and use your legs. Why do you care? Teo suddenly snapped. He didn't need Aurelio giving him pointers or saving him or making fun of him, and he certainly didn't need more unwanted attention from everyone else in the room. He didn't need Aurelio, period. Aurelio opened his mouth to respond, but Aristella's voice cut in. Yeah, why do you care? She stared at her brother, waiting for his response. For a moment, Aurelio stood there, looking between Teo and his sister like he couldn't decide what to do. Teo glared back, the only act of defiance he could manage when trapped under those flinty eyes. Aurelio, Audistella insisted. Finally, Aurelio exhaled through pursed lips and then turned and walked away. Never one to back down, Teo scoffed and bent forward again. He grabbed the bar and wrenched. The good news was he was easily able to lift the weight. The bad news was that the pain immediately exploded in his lower back, shooting up his spine, highlighting that. And that is actually true. When you pick up something heavy, you probably already know this, you guys, but even if it's something you can pick up, you're supposed to lift with your legs, not go like that with your back. And I know this because I once burst a disc in my back from picking things up, and it's a horrible thing. The weights dropped from such force, even Desi looked over. Teo had to clench his jaw to keep from yelping when Aurelio glanced back. He stood up, back rigid, and quickly turned away so Aurelio couldn't see his pained expression, but found Shio watching him with a concerned look. "Are you okay?" "We gotta go," Teo managed between his teeth. Shio looked like he was trying not to smile. "You need help?" Teo nodded quickly and hobbled out of the training room. He needed to lie down. Okay, so yeah, I'm hoping because he's a semidios, he'll heal quickly, because when I pulled my back and I had to go to the hospital, and I was like laying down for 3 weeks. To get up made me like cry. It was I've had babies, okay, and it was worse than that. So, yeah, always lift carefully. That's the moral to that story. Okay, so next chapter is chapter 8. See you then. Keep reading.
You read the books, now ready, get set at BOBQB.net.